Good afternoon, cadets. This is Lance from Cinematic Galaxy here to bring you my review of. Uh-oh, what's that? Bum, 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 bum. Spider-Man, Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out! There goes a Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud. He's got radioactive blood. Can he swing on a thread? Take a look overhead. Beware, there goes a Spider-Man. In the chill of night, at the scene of a crime, like a shriek of light, he arrives just in time. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Wealth and fame, he's ignored. Action is his reward to him. Life is a great big bang up. Wherever there's a hang up, you'll find the Spider-Man. Boom. All right, so yes, Spider-Man just swung into town. So I had to do him. I had to sing his anthem because he is excited that I'm finally reviewing Spider-Man: Homecoming after 2 weeks. I apologize for the late review, but yeah, I had to let this movie process a while. I saw it back when it came out, and I saw it again. Yeah, some of it has been laziness, but I'm here. I wanted to get the review out. Uh, Brief preface: I love Spider-Man. He's my favorite superhero, and I've been a fan since I was 8 years old. I'm 24 now. I'm not going to go too deep into the history of that, but just to give you a brief rundown, I watched the '90s cartoon, watched a little bit of the '60s show, which I just sang the theme to very beautifully, I must say, and I've seen every Spider-Man film in theaters, including this one. So just to run down: Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, The Amazing Spider-Man, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And now we finally have Spider-Man Homecoming, in which Spidey is in the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Something I was very excited for. Um, and my first time seeing this film, I admit that I had a lot of expectations. I had just watched the original Tobey Maguire film. It's cheesy as it is. I love it, and I think it still has a lot of charm and a lot of heart. And it really did do the character justice, in my opinion, in the ways that mattered most. Um, and Spider-Man 2 is my favorite one. So, yeah, I think my first time, to be honest, seeing Homecoming, I was underwhelmed. I was quite underwhelmed, and I couldn't relax. I was kind of analyzing every frame and nitpicking every little thing, and whenever Tony Stark came up, I was kind of bitter about that. And whenever something kind of tied to the MCU, I was nitpicking that. And to be honest, I knew right away that this was going to be an MCU Spider-Man. And I was happy about that, but I don't know if I was quite ready for it. It's so different from what we've seen before with Spider-Man having his own film universe. Um, but I let it process. I let it process, and I came back to see it. And I have to say, my second time, not changing my opinion to conform with anyone, I loved Homecoming. I really do. And there's a lot of reasons I can say I loved it. First of all, the cast. You've got Tom Holland returning from Civil War as Peter Parker Spider-Man. He's finally a high school student, 15, not close to 30 like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, um, playing a high school student. So that was great, and he's spectacular. He honestly captures everything about Spider-Man that you would love from the comics and from the cartoons, and he's perfect in the role, in my opinion. You have Marissa Tomei as a very young Aunt May. And then you have Michael Keaton as Vulture. You have Zendaya as a character named Michelle. I forget the actor's name who plays his best friend, Ned Leeds. A new character in the film. I thought he was very good. I can't recall the actress's name who plays Liz Allen. I thought she was great. I thought the cast was great all across the board. Um, I thought the story, upon rewatching, the story was very focused, very tight, and had the right amount of humor. I think the film had the right amount of humor, and it also had the right amount of heart and emotion, and the right amount of darkness as well, for being a young Spider-Man. So I love that. I really dug the action as well. I thought the action was very well filmed. There was nothing quite show-stopping like the train sequence in Spider-Man 2, which is, in my opinion, still the high bar for comic book movies 13 years later. It's insane how long it's been since that movie. But yeah, but the action here was still very good. And I have to say, I think what I love the most about Homecoming is the fact that this is a very young Spider-Man. Again, not delving too much on my first time seeing it, I think I wanted more of the show-stopping heroics that we saw with, especially Spider-Man 2 with Maguire. But but in actuality, a young Spider-Man isn't quite ready for those types of heroic feats. Even though this isn't an origin story, and even though he's still learning, um, even though I mean he's been doing this a while, he's still not ready for feats quite that epic, like the train sequence. So I mean he does something close to that without spoiling it, but nothing quite to that level in my opinion. But the action I still thought was very good, and I loved the way Spider-Man moves, and yeah, it was great seeing him screw up and make mistakes. So that was really cool. I really enjoyed his dynamic with Tony Stark in this film. Thankfully, a big concern I had with the marketing was that Tony Stark would be in this film too much, but he's not. He really isn't. He's a supporting character, and he's not overplayed. His humor's not over the top. I was very impressed with how they used Tony Stark and Happy, his assistant, played by Jon Favreau. They were used very well in the film, so that was great. Yeah, really, the movie's tons of fun, and the humor, the heart, seeing a young Spider-Man like this, it worked, and it makes this film unique. Um, to get into my negatives now, again, after my second time, there really aren't many, but I understand this is a young Spider-Man, and I understand that the director John Watts was going for a kind of John Hughes Breakfast Club vibe, or Ferris Bueller vibe. And I thought that worked for the most part. There were some scenes where I thought the humor was a little overdone, a little too juvenile. One scene toward the end, not the very end, but involving one of the high school characters, there was a joke that I really didn't care for, to be honest. And I thought it was out of place in a Spider-Man film and in a comic book film. Just my opinion, though. There really aren't many instances like that. So I mean, it's still cool. For the most part, the jokes landed for me. Um, Another issue I have, my main issue with the film, is actually the score. Now, there's nothing wrong with the score itself. It works for the film. It sounds good. It's by Michael Giacchino, who I'm a big fan of, and I actually loved his Rogue One score more than a lot of other people did. But for me, his Spider-Man score was missing something. The main theme, the big epic orchestral adaptation of the 60s theme, slight spoilers here, it only plays at the beginning with the Marvel logo. That was a huge disappointment for me. Um, Aside from that, there's really no negatives. There's just one scene toward the end that is a direct adaptation of my all-time favorite Spider-Man scene from the comics. Those of you who've read them, my all-time favorite comic book scene in general. And I thought the film scene worked very well. It just didn't quite stack up to the original comic scene. That's a very minor issue. That's not really a complaint, just me nitpicking as a comic book fan. But all in all, I dug the heck out of Spider-Man Homecoming. I would recommend it. It's actually my second favorite Spider-Man film after Spider-Man 2, just before Spider-Man 1. And I give it a solid 9.3 out of 10. Let me guys know if you plan on seeing this film. If you have seen it, what were your thoughts? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't be too hard on my singing, and this is Lance from Cinematic Galaxy, signing off.